One of South Africa's universities where students have taken to the streets to protest against financial exclusion at the institution. The students from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg are demanding to be allowed to register for the new school year despite outstanding fees. The protest, which started last week, saw students disrupting some classes and closing campus stores.
Among the demands are that students with less than 150,000 rand debt be allowed to register, and that the upfront fee for the residences be waived. The university has since suspended disruptors who transgressed the university rules during ongoing protests at the institution. Joining us now from Johannesburg, South Africa, to discuss this further is journalist and editor Diane Hawker. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. A very uncomfortable situation to see with what's happening there. I think the first question would be, we understand the reasons for the protests. They're wanting exclusion. They want students with less than 150,000 rand debt to be allowed to register. But I think the question that comes to mind is, how realistic are their demands?
Well, absolutely. The demands that the students are bringing, I think, they can be seen as quite important, but it becomes difficult because the numbers are quite high. Usually with South African universities, if you have an outstanding debt that is as high as 150,000, you're not allowed to register for the next year. They do, in some cases, allow smaller amounts like 20,000 or 10,000, you're able to continue. So for amounts like 150,000, historically, that has not been allowed. We saw similar calls in the past with the Fees Must Fall movement of 2015, where there was a question about, financial exclusion. But at that time, definitely the amounts were not as high. They were talking about the lower thousands. And the universities did make some concessions saying that students would be allowed to register and that the registration amounts, which was usually quite high, over 9,000 Rand, could be reduced in some cases to smaller amounts. Another big issue being brought forward by the university students is the issue of accommodation. Some of the students have been sharing videos and pictures of students sleeping in library rooms and on library floors. And I think this is, something that is important to be resolved by the university, whether it does it on its own or with external parties. There has historically been an issue with affordable student accommodation within the area. Wits University does have a limited amount of on-campus accommodation, and it does rely heavily on apartments in the Braamfontein area, which are, of course, owned by private property practitioners. So there has been a long-standing issue with accommodation, and I think the students are asking the university to act more on that, to find more accommodation on campus. There apparently are some buildings that are currently not open, but the university says that they're not in a state that's livable at present.
All right. Tell us a little bit, if the government has, or the institution has reached any agreement or reached out to the students to maybe, find some middle ground here. And also, I want us to understand what this, about this university, Witwatersrand. Is it, seemed like, a high-class university just for the rich? Or, would any random, earning South African be able to afford to send their student there or their children there?
Well, let me first give you some context about the university. I think Wits University is amongst the top universities in South Africa. It regularly, ranks amongst the 100 top universities in the world, along with UCT in Cape Town. So it is a very well-considered university with a very good academic record, both in social sciences and in sciences like engineering, mining, and it's got a doctor school that's linked to one of the big hospitals in Johannesburg. It's a university that can be quite expensive to attend. However, in South Africa, there is a program, the NSFAS program, which is a National Fees Program, that students can apply for to be able to gain access to any university in South Africa. The challenge, however, is that there are certain limits on how much funding is available through the NSFAS program. And the NSFAS program also has a means test that it does. So if it looks at how much your parents earn or your guardian, and then it will determine whether you qualify for that program. So in some instances, even though students might not have the available funds, they also might not qualify. And that has been called the missing middle, where people are considered middle class, so there is enough income on paper, but in practical terms, the parents may not have sufficient funds to pay the school amount, and that's been referred to as the missing middle. When it comes to the issue of engagements with the staff and the students, the university leadership has been having regular meetings with the students. In fact, they had a meeting late into Sunday. However, the university management is concerned with the approach that the students have taken. They say that the students, have not been negotiating in good faith because they've also protested outside the house of the vice chancellor, and a group of students threatened to burn the house, which has led the university to be concerned about the safety of the vice chancellor. So that was what took place yesterday. The students say that they will continue to hold peaceful protests, and we are expecting more protests at the gates outside of the university today. And we'll have to see whether they're able to later meet around the table. Now, some of your viewers might recall that in 2015, there were student protests like this, and it took quite a long time for those issues to actually be resolved. They spread to other parts of the country at the time, and eventually government also had to step in to deal with the issue.
Let's talk about the welfare of the students in this case, or maybe their safety. Are there concerns that the protests will have a negative impact on other students' academic programs as the school session is still on? Also, we have reports that Amnesty International South Africa has called on Wits University security to exercise restraint during the protests. It's also said that they should only use force against protesting students as a last resort, and that only bare minimum should be used to prevent injury or loss of life. We've seen that there are some students who have been sanctioned as a result of the protests. So what is the fate of the students really? What do we see as their fate?
Well, the university has been closed essentially. There were no classes last week, Friday, and some classes did continue online, but that obviously is a limited forum. I think with the advent of the pandemic, it has offered an opportunity for some classes to continue online if the lecturers and the students can agree to that. Physical classes were disrupted over several days, and that resulted in the classes being closed. The students have been mainly using bricks and stones against the security guards, and we saw that some security guards were injured as a result. The university does have quite a extensive security plan, I would say, and last week there were some concerns that even media were not being allowed on campus. That was brought to the attention of the university management. The media people were concerned that they were not being allowed on campus by security and were not being allowed to properly document what was actually going on. The response from the university was that they felt that the media was basically, the focus from the media was encouraging the protest, and that the students were playing to the cameras to a certain extent in this process. So we'll have to see to what extent the security is either increased or decreased this week, as well as whether the media will be actually allowed to properly cover all aspects of the protest on the campus.
I guess we can only wait to see how this eventually turns out. Dan Holker, thank you very much for joining us with all the updates from Istanbul, Turkey. We hope to hear some good news concerning the university, and that they find some form of middle ground for the students and the university as well.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.